And welcome back to Readers That Write. We've got an awesome topic for you guys today, talking about writing hard things. So for those of you who aren't professional authors or don't write regularly, this is actually a really cool situation or a topic to discuss as a reader as well. There's a lot of these very hard scenes that you'll read in a book and are some of most audiences' favorites. So what does the author go through? And for the authors, what are the steps you need to get through it? Because I've had to do a bunch of these lately, and they are hard. I had a bunch concluding the last book in my fantasy trilogy. I've got several more coming up in the book I'm currently editing, as well as in some of the short fiction that I've written. So let's talk about it. How do we as authors deal with these hard topics and hard scenes that are to write? Why are they important? And that's one of the big questions an author has to write first, or has to understand first, is understanding why it's important to have this scene in this story. We don't write these hard scenes just to write these hard scenes. We write these hard scenes for specific reasons, whether it be to grow a character or to develop the plot or to convey a message that we want to convey. It doesn't matter why it's important, but it needs to be important, and you need to understand why it's important. Once you have that, you have a great foundation to build off of and something to grow and work with to make sure you're molding this important scene and this difficult scene to write. For example, a character's death. Lately, after Game of Thrones, a lot of authors have just been killing off characters willy-nilly. Yes, it is part of Grimdark to kill off characters, but the one thing people seem to miss is that George R. R. Martin is a master at writing these hard scenes because he understands the importance. There is never a major character death that doesn't build up another character or push the plot forward or allow a major character to grow and change, or in some cases shatter. And understanding this importance is something that he does to help us understand the importance of why these characters had to die. And it's hard. Killing characters is very hard. But understanding the why and why it's so important gives us the opportunity to latch on to this situation. It allows us to emotionally connect to the situation because as authors, we need to be emotionally prepared for it. It's something that we need to be in the right headspace for. For example, I can't write a difficult scene while I'm dealing with something difficult in my life. It does not work. I will struggle through it. But a lot of my difficult scenes are still directly connected to a lot of situations I've been through, whether it be the loss of loved ones or difficult situations that we have to deal with throughout our lives. I can emotionally connect those to these situations. Sometimes it's a little bit of a stretch, but as long as I can empathize with the character, I can write it. But if I'm dealing with massive stress from work or life, or my health is bad, or any of these situations are impeding me from being able to give my full attention and my full emotions to this scene, it will not work. Like, for example, I have a day job, and I write a lot on my breaks. That's honestly one of the best writing times I have. That and late at night, which is actually when I'm filming this. But when I'm at work, my job is hyperlogical, which is fine. I enjoy that. I'm a hyperlogical person most of the time. But that also means I can't muster the emotional preparedness to write a deep scene. I absolutely have to do that at night. And I have to spend multiple hours preparing. I'll hang out with my puppy for a while, get myself calm, get the stress gone for the day. Usually I'll cook because I enjoy that and that relieves stress. I may even watch a movie or a TV show to help build up that emotional openness that allows me to connect with the situation and allows me to grow with that character. And it allows me to empathize and recognize what they might be feeling at the time. And that's something as a young author I didn't actually understand. So in my early stories and even my first published work, there are points like that are missing. A lot of times I even have to go back during my editing and I'll find places where I've screwed that up and I have to go and rewrite sometimes entire chapters, sometimes multiple chapters to make sure the emotional feel is correct. And that's something that we as authors need to understand, that we need to be in the correct headspace to write some of these scenes. Yes, the journey, the filler, the arc, all that kind of stuff can be written on my lunch break. I'm good. I can do fight scenes on my lunch break. That's not a problem. But the emotional, heart-wrenching scenes that are needed in a book are something that we have to be in the right headspace as authors to do. It's key to making sure that is an authentic scene. Now, some hard scenes aren't pure emotion. Some of these scenes are something that we need to fit in there because that's part of the character's journey, but may not be something we know a lot about. But we want to make it authentic. And that's where research comes in. Researching some of these situations to create characters that are believable and are able to represent certain groups is something that is extremely important. For example, one of the writers in my writers group wrote a story where the main character has dwarfism. She spent, I believe, over a year researching what that means and what that really actually would cause her character to deal with. And it was massively impressive to see how much work she put in to get to that point. I don't know if her story is ready yet and been released. It's been a little while since I've actually been to that writers group. But the level of research she did to create that authentic character was amazing. And that character was spectacular. So how much research do we actually need to do? And what type of research is best to do? And the short answer to that is it depends. It depends on what type of character you're doing. If you're creating a military officer and you've never served in the military, talk to one. There's a lot of them. They're everywhere and they're typically not too hard to get a hold of. There's even several Reddit forums and Facebook groups for military veterans who are willing to answer questions. If you find them, they're most of the time very happy to help you out. A lot of them are fans of science fiction and fantasy. Those two fandoms are massive in the military, and getting advice there is super easy. If you're wanting to write someone with certain health conditions, reach out on the forums, search the web, find doctors who treat them or treat those types of people, and make sure you get your information right. It can be extremely difficult to write something that you don't have direct experience with, but being able to do it and knowing how to do the research is extremely important. It's the reason some authors are able to write so diverse a cast of characters, something that Brandon Sanderson gets a lot of credit for, and he absolutely deserves it because he researches so hard and works with major groups to define characters the way that they should be based on what they're going through. And he does a very good job of actively representing the reality of dealing with whether it be depression or other types of mental illness or physical impairments. And that is one of the hardest things to do as an author, is not going too far down the rabbit hole, but making sure you do enough research that you properly represent a group. Now, the next is character perspective and their voice. One of the keys to these hard scenes is understanding how the character would perceive it, because they may not perceive it the same way we will. And this is often a struggle for authors, is understanding that a character has a different point of view than you do in a lot of cases. They may not understand information, or they may be choosing to ignore information, or they may just view the entire situation differently and be struggling to come to terms with it, where this is something that you as an author accept. So taking the time to define the customer's perspective, or a customer's perspective, a character's perspective, excuse me, and understanding their voice and how they would describe the situation is extremely important. So it's often suggested that authors write and test chapters or test paragraphs in a character's voice. Don't know why I keep saying customer. In a character's voice, so that it's easily understandable. And once you do that, you can flow better into it. I keep going back to Brandon Sanderson because he's one of my favorite authors, but he actually wrote an entire book in order to try and better understand a character's voice for a major staple in his Cosmere. And you don't have to go that far, but understanding your character and understanding their viewpoint will help you write this hard scene better. And now, the next one, these keep getting progressively harder as we go, but balancing details and sensitivity. Sometimes too many details are detrimental, and you don't want to do that. They can cause issues with the readers who have actually dealt with this. And that is something we need to be very careful about. I often, especially in the military science fiction realm, hear a lot about concerns with PTSD or PTS and how much is okay to show. This is an active struggle that a lot of people deal with, but isn't very represented in science fiction and fantasy. And with all the veterans and people who've been through very traumatic situations, a lot of them want to see this more heavily represented. But you have to toe the line between representing it and going too far into detail. A lot of these people are very concerned about the way PTSD is perceived. So you have to be very careful about how you display this in a way that will properly represent them, but will not increase stigma or trauma. And that's one of the hardest struggles we have as an author in a lot of these hard situations. There's a lot of other types of situations. A lot of them I probably shouldn't name on YouTube, but I'm sure you probably figured those out, that as authors we have to be extremely careful with. And oftentimes it's skirting a line very carefully and making sure we use the proper verbiage to display it and represent it, but not extend the trauma. And this isn't something you have to do on your first draft. You should try and do it on your first draft, but be aware that this will probably take multiple revisions. A lot of these scenes do. But there's other ways to nuance your way into it with subtext and your imagination and the reader's imagination. You can help them understand the situation without having to actually say it. And a lot of times this is the way that we achieve this balance with sensitivity, is by carefully spurring the imagination so everyone can understand what you're trying to say happens in the future without actually explicitly saying it happened. But the struggle is real. You have to figure out how to layer in the subtext and layer in the foreshadowing and the build and the explanation of emotional responses so that everyone understands what happened without you having to actually say it. And the last key to these hard chapters is revision and feedback. A lot of these chapters or scenes will require far more revision and far more feedback than some of the other chapters in your book or scenes in your story. Scenes with fighting or journeying or just conversations typically don't require as much revision. You can usually do 1 or 2 passes on them and they're good. You don't typically have to go back through. Usually if you do, it causes more problems. The opposite is true for difficult scenes. These are the ones you should revise to death. Go through them as many times as necessary until you feel it's right. Then hand it to someone else. Let them go through it 2 or 3 times. Make sure they have it to where they feel is right. And repeat that process. And if you're dealing with authenticity issues or dealing with something that's very sensitive to a specific group, involve them. Have them arc and beta read for you. By doing that, you can ensure that you're representing them properly and you're not running the risk of offending people. You still may offend people. That just happens these days. But if you are actively trying with that community to represent them properly, and you have gone out of your way to have them read and you make revisions based on their suggestions, you did your job. You can be proud of it. It doesn't matter whether someone is or is not offended by it. As long as you did your job and you went out of your way to represent them and you involved that community to ensure that you were representing them correctly, a few people being offended is not too bad. This type of revision and feedback cycle is something that we as authors need to be very, very careful with. You should always have your alpha readers, your couple people, your significant other, or in some case your kids, or in my case my mother, who can read the story and straight up tell you, this is terrible, start over, or here's what I liked about it. Having someone to do an initial check on your story and read through it is something that's extremely valuable. The next step is your beta readers. These are typically your writers group, or in some cases you'll have Uber fans who want to join and beta read for you. Their job is to look for the big plot holes and major writing flaws. For example, if you write in passive voice way too much, they can recognize that. If your chapter is structured terribly, they can recognize that. If you had a character promise to do one thing and then do the opposite 2 chapters later, they'll catch that. That is why they're there. They're there to help you find the big holes and the flaws that you're dealing with. Typically, you'll do a revision after your ARC readers, after your alpha readers. You'll do a revision after your beta readers. And other authors will have more layers. Just depends on how big a group you have and how long you're willing to take. If you're an author like Brandon Sanderson, who has massive teams of alpha, beta, and gamma readers, great. That's fantastic. The more readers you can get your books in front of before they go to print, the more feedback you'll have. And that is never a bad thing. You do have to learn how to recognize good feedback and ignore bad feedback. That just comes with practice. But if you're willing to do all of this and go through this entire process, writing these hard scenes will be a staple that makes you a popular author. Or for the readers of the group, this is the process that your favorite authors go through, the ones who can write these hard scenes. They go through all of this in order to make sure these scenes work. So if you have any questions about how to write hard scenes, or you have some hard scenes that were your favorite in some of your favorite books, please comment them below. I always am happy to help authors with these questions, and I always love reading successes with an author that has managed to do this. It's not easy, and I want to be able to recognize them and talk about all of their successes and everything they've been able to do. So thank you for joining us today on Readers That Write. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you ring that little bell, you'll get notified every time we've got a new one of these videos coming out. And we'll see you guys next time.